As night fell and the light of the fire began to shine out brightly, he began to tell them tales to keep their minds from fear. He knew many histories and legends of long ago, of elves and men, and the good and evil deeds of the elder days. They wondered how old he was, and where he had learned all this lore. "Tell us of Gil-galad," said Merry suddenly, when he paused at the end of a story of the elf kingdoms. "Do you know any more of that old lay that you spoke of?" "I do indeed," answered Strider. "So also does Frodo, for it concerns us closely." Merry and Pippin looked at Frodo, who was staring into the fire. "I know only the little that Gandalf has told me," said Frodo slowly. "Gil-galad was the last of the great elf kings of Middle-earth. Gil-galad is Starlight, in their tongue. With Elendil, the elf friend, he went to the land of
No,
said Strider, interrupting. "I do not think that tale should be told now with the servants of the enemy at hand. If we win through to the house of Elrond, you may hear it there, told in full." "Then tell us some other tale of the old days," begged Sam. "A tale about elves before the fighting time. I would dearly like to hear some more about elves. The dark seems to press around so close." "I will tell you the tale of Tinuviel," said Strider. "In brief, for it is a long tale which the end is not known, and there are none now except Elrond that remember it aright, as it was told of old. It is a fair tale, though it is sad, as are all the tales of Middle-earth, and yet it may lift up your hearts." He was silent for some time, and then he began not to speak, but to chant softly. "The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen, of stars in shadow shimmering. Tinuviel was dancing there, to music of a pipe unseen, and light of stars was in her hair, and in her raiment glimmering. There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves, and where the elven river rolled, he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following. Enchantment healed his weary feet, that over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening. Through woven woods in elven home she slightly fled on dancing feet, and left him lonely, still to roam in the silent forest listening. He heard there oft the flying sound of fleet as light as linden leaves, or music welling underground, in hidden hollows quavering. Now withered lay the hemlock leaves, and one by one with sighing sound, whispering fell the beech's leaves, in the wintry woodland wavering. He sought her ever, wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn, by light of moon and ray of star, in frosty heavens shivering. Her mantle glinted in the moon, as on a hilltop high and far she danced, and at her feet was strewn a mist of silver quivering. When river passed she came again, and her song released the sudden spring, like rising dark and falling rain, and melting water bubbling. He saw the elven flowers spring about her feet and healed again. He longed by her to dance and sing upon the grass untroubling. Again she fled, but swift he came, Tinuviel, Tinuviel. He called her by her elvish name, and there she halted, listening. One moment stood she, and a spell his voice laid on her. Beren came, and doom fell on Tinuviel, that in his arms lay glistening. As Beren looked into her eyes, within the shadows of her hair, the trembling starlight of the skies, he saw there mirrored shimmering Tinuviel the elven fair, immortal maiden elven wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and arms like silver glimmering. Long was the way that fate them bore, ere stony mountains cold and grey, through folds of iron and darkling door, and woods of nightshade morrowless, the sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more, and long ago they passed away, in the forest singing sorrowless. Strider sighed and paused before he spoke again. that is called Anthenoth among the elves, but is hard to remember in our common speech. But this is but a rough echo of it. It tells of the meeting of Beren, son of Barahir, and Lúthien Tinuviel. Beren was a mortal man, but Lúthien was the daughter of Thingol, a king of elves upon Middle-earth, when the world was young, and she was the fairest maiden that has ever been among all the children of this world. As the stars above the mists of the northern lands was her loveliness, and in her face was a shining light. In those days the great enemy, of whom Sauron of Mordor was but a servant, dwelt in Angband in the north, and the elves of the west, coming back to Middle-earth, made war upon him to regain the Silmarils which he had stolen. And the fathers of men aided the elves. But the enemy was victorious, and Barahir was slain, and Beren, escaping through great peril, came over the mountains of terror into the kingdom of Thingol in the forest of Neldoreth. There he beheld Lúthien, singing and dancing in a glade beside the enchanted river Esgalduin, and he named her Tinuviel, that is the nightingale in the language of old. Many sorrows befell them afterwards, and they were parted long. Tinuviel rescued Beren from the dungeons of Sauron, and together they passed through the great dangers, and cast down even the great enemy from his throne, and took from his iron crown one of the 3 Silmarils, brightest of all jewels, to be the bride price of Lúthien to Thingol her father. Yet at last Beren was slain by the wolf that came from the gates of Angband, and he died in the arms of Tinuviel. But she chose mortality, and to die from the world so that she might follow him, and it is sung that they met again beyond the sundering seas, and after a brief time walking alive once more in the green woods, together they passed, long ago, beyond the confines of this world. So it is that Lúthien Tinuviel alone of the elf kindred has died indeed, and left the world, and they have lost her whom they most loved. But from her lineage of the elf lords of old, descended upon men, there live still those of whom Lúthien was the foremother, and it is said that her line shall never fail. Elrond of Rivendell is of that kin. For of Beren and Lúthien was born Dior Thingol's heir, and of him Elwing the White, whom Eärendil wedded, he that sailed his ship out of the mists of the world into the seas of heaven with the Silmaril upon his brow. And of Eärendil came the kings of Númenor, that is Westernesse. As Strider was speaking, they watched his strange, eager face, dimly lit with the red glow of the wood fire. His eyes shone, and his voice was rich and deep. Above him was a black starry sky,